Dr. Elena Marchetti wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished stitching up young Tommy's arm. The 8-year-old had fallen from a tree while trying to reach the last apples of the season. His mother, Anna, held his hand tightly as Elena worked with steady fingers. "There you go, brave boy," Elena said with a warm smile. "Keep this bandage clean and dry. Come back in 5 days so I can check how it's healing." Tommy's eyes were wide with curiosity rather than fear. "Dr. Maria, why do your hands shake sometimes?" Elena paused for a moment, even after 3 years. The memory still haunted her. The screaming crowds in the capital city, the smoke rising from burning buildings, the moment she realized she could never go back to her old life. "Sometimes our hands remember things our hearts wish they could forget," she said gently. "But they still know how to heal." Anna pressed a small bag of dried herbs into Elena's hands. "It's all we have this month, doctor. The harvest wasn't good." Elena nodded and accepted the payment. She had learned not to refuse what people offered. In these mountain villages, pride mattered as much as medicine. "This is perfect. I was running low on these exact herbs as the mother and son left her small clinic." Elena looked around at the place that had become her sanctuary. The stone walls were carved directly into the mountainside, keeping the rooms cool in summer and warm in winter. Shelves lined every wall, filled with bottles of medicine she made herself from local plants. A small wood stove crackled in the corner, and simple beds with clean white sheets stood ready for patients who needed to stay overnight. This wasn't the life she had planned. 3 years ago, she had been Dr. Elena Marchetti, head surgeon at the Royal Medical Center in the capital. She had lived in a beautiful house with servants, ate at fancy restaurants, and was invited to palace dinners. Her name appeared in medical journals, and young doctors fought for the chance to learn from her. But that world had crumbled in a single day. She remembered standing in the palace courtyard, watching King Aldrich address the crowd of protesters. They weren't violent people. They were farmers whose crops had failed, workers whose wages had been cut, mothers whose children were hungry. They had come peacefully, hoping their king would listen to their problems instead. The king had ordered his guards to attack them. Elena had watched in horror as soldiers charged into the crowd. With swords drawn, she saw children trampled, old men beaten, women crying over their injured husbands. When the palace guards brought the wounded to her hospital, she had worked for 36 hours straight, trying to save as many lives as possible. The next morning, exhausted and covered in blood, she had done something that changed everything. She had walked to the palace gates and spoken words that she could never take back. "Your Majesty," she had said to King Aldrich in front of his entire court. "A king who hurts his own people is no king at all. He is just a man with a crown who has forgotten his heart." The silence that followed was deafening. Nobles gasped. Guards reached for their weapons. The king's face turned red with rage. "Arrest her," he had commanded. "Dr. Elena Marchetti is a traitor to the crown." But Elena's friends in the medical community had warned her. By sunset, she was already fleeing the city on horseback, carrying nothing but a bag of medical supplies and the clothes on her back. She had ridden for 3 days and nights until she reached these remote mountains, where the king's soldiers rarely ventured. The villagers here had welcomed her without asking questions. They called her Dr. Maria and never pressed her about her past. In return, she had given them something they had never had before, a real doctor who cared about their health and didn't charge more than they could afford. Elena walked to her window and looked out at the village below. Smoke rose from chimneys as families prepared their evening meals. Children played in the streets while their parents finished the day's work. Old people sat on porches, sharing stories and watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. This was a good life, she told herself. Simple, honest, meaningful. She delivered babies, treated broken bones, helped people through their final days with dignity and comfort. Every person she healed was a victory. Against the king's cruelty, every life she saved was proof that kindness could survive even in the darkest times. But sometimes, in the quiet moments like this, she felt the weight of all the lives she couldn't save. In the capital, There were hospitals without enough doctors, clinics that had closed because their best healers had fled or been imprisoned, and sick people who couldn't afford treatment. Her small clinic could only help so many people. Elena shook her head and pushed those thoughts away. She had learned to focus on what she could control, not what she couldn't change. She was preparing to close the clinic for the night when she heard something that made her blood freeze. The sound of horses galloping up the mountain path, moving fast and desperate. In 3 years of hiding, this was the sound she had feared most. Had they found her? Were King Aldrich's soldiers finally coming to drag her back to the capital in chains? Elena's heart pounded as she blew out most of the candles, leaving just enough light to see. She moved quietly to the window and peered through the curtain. Through the evening mist, she could see dark shapes on horseback racing toward her clinic. As they got closer, she realized these weren't soldiers in bright uniforms. These riders wore dark cloaks and moved like people running from something, not chasing it. One of the horses carried two people, and the person in front was slumped forward, clearly unconscious or badly hurt. Elena felt her doctor's instincts take over, pushing her fear aside. Someone needed help, and that was more important than her own safety. She had sworn an oath long ago to heal the sick and injured, no matter who they were or where they came from. She lit more candles and unlocked her door just as the riders reached her clinic. The lead rider, face hidden beneath a hood, slid down from his horse and carefully lifted the unconscious person from the saddle. "Please," he said in a voice rough with exhaustion and worry. "She's hurt badly. We heard there was a healer in this village." Elena stepped back and gestured toward one of the beds. "Bring her inside, quickly." As the man carried the injured woman into her clinic, Elena got her first good look at the patient. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, with long dark hair matted with blood. Her face was pale, and Elena could see a deep cut across her forehead that would need immediate attention. But something about the woman seemed familiar, though Elena couldn't place where she might have seen her before. "What happened?" Elena asked as she began examining the patient. "A riding accident," one of the other riders said quickly. "She fell from her horse in the mountain pass. We've been riding for hours to find help." Elena nodded, but her experienced eyes told her this was more than a simple fall. The pattern of injuries, the way the riders kept glancing nervously at the door, the obvious quality of the woman's clothes despite the dirt and blood, everything suggested this was no ordinary accident. But Elena had learned not to ask too many questions. In these mountains, people often had secrets, and a good doctor respected that. "I'll need you to wait outside while I work," she told the riders. "This will take time." As the men reluctantly left her clinic, Elena began the careful work of cleaning and treating the woman's wounds. She had done this countless times before, but something about this patient felt different, important, as if this moment would change everything. Outside, she could hear the riders talking in low, urgent voices. The wind carried fragments of their conversation, but Elena focused on her work. The woman's life was in her hands now, and nothing else mattered. What Elena didn't know was that this injured stranger would soon turn her quiet life upside down and lead her toward a destiny she never could have imagined. Elena worked by candlelight, her hands moving with practiced precision as she examined the unconscious woman. The injury on her forehead was deep but clean, the kind of wound that would heal well with proper care. What worried her more were the signs of internal injuries, the way the woman's breathing was shallow, the bruising along her ribs, the way she flinched even in unconsciousness when Elena pressed certain areas. This wasn't just a fall from a horse, Elena whispered to herself as she cleaned the head wound. The pattern of injuries told a different story. This looked more like someone had been in a fight, or maybe thrown from a horse that was moving very fast. As Elena worked, she noticed details that made her more curious about her mysterious patient. The woman's hands were soft, without the calluses that came from hard physical work. Her fingernails, despite being dirty now, showed signs of recent care. Most telling of all were her clothes, even torn and stained with blood. Elena could see they were made from expensive fabric with fine stitching. But there were other things too. The woman had scars on her knuckles, the kind fighters got from training with weapons. Her arms were strong and muscled, not what you'd expect from someone who lived an easy life. There was a contradiction here that Elena couldn't quite understand. The riders outside were getting restless. Elena could hear them pacing, their boots crunching on the gravel path. Every few minutes, one of them would peer through her window, checking on their companion's progress. "How is she?" called out the man who had carried the woman inside. "She's alive," Elena replied without looking up from her work. "That's all I can tell you right now." Elena began stitching the head wound, working carefully to minimize scarring. As she cleaned away the blood from the woman's face, she got a better look at her features. High cheekbones, a strong jawline, dark eyebrows that suggested intelligence and determination. Even unconscious and injured, there was something regal about her appearance. Where had Elena seen this face before? She continued her examination, checking for broken ribs and internal bleeding. The woman was lucky, bruised badly, but nothing seemed to be broken inside. As Elena worked, she discovered something that made her heart skip a beat. On the woman's left shoulder was a distinctive birthmark, shaped almost like a crescent moon. Elena had seen that mark before in drawings posted on walls throughout the kingdom. Wanted posters that showed the face of someone the king was desperately trying to find. Princess Lina. Elena's hands trembled as the realization hit her. This wasn't just any injured traveler. This was King Aldrich's own daughter, the rebellious princess who had been making headlines across the kingdom for months. The same princess who had publicly defied her father, who had been caught helping poor families, who had supposedly been training with groups that opposed the king's harsh rule. The same princess who had been officially disowned by her father 6 months ago, though everyone knew the king's soldiers were still searching for her. Elena felt dizzy. She sat down heavily on her wooden stool, staring at the unconscious woman. If this really was Princess Lina, then Elena was in more danger than she had ever imagined. Helping the king's enemy would be seen as treason of the highest order. The punishment for harboring a wanted criminal was death. But as Elena looked at the injured woman, another thought came to her mind. She remembered the stories she had heard about Princess Lina. Unlike her cruel father, the princess was said to care deeply about the suffering of common people. She had been caught distributing food to starving villages, paying for medicines that poor families couldn't afford, and speaking out against the king's harsh policies. People in the mountain villages had whispered about her with admiration, not fear. They called her the people's princess and said she was nothing like her father. Some even hoped she might one day become queen and change the kingdom for the better. Elena stood up and continued her work, her mind racing. Whether this was Princess Lina or not, she had taken an oath as a healer. She couldn't abandon a patient, no matter who they were or what danger it might bring her. As she worked, the woman began to stir. Her eyelids fluttered, and she made soft sounds of pain. Elena quickly prepared a mild sedative from her herbs, enough to keep the patient comfortable, but not so much that she couldn't wake up if needed. "Shh," Elena whispered gently. "You're safe. You're hurt, but you're going to be okay." The woman's eyes opened slowly. They were dark green, intelligent, and alert despite her injuries. She looked around the small clinic with confusion, trying to understand where she was. Who are you?" the woman asked, her voice weak but clear. "I'm a doctor," Elena replied simply. "You were brought to me with injuries. What's your name?" The woman hesitated, clearly thinking carefully about her answer. "Anna," she said finally. "My name is Anna." Elena nodded, not letting her expression show that she suspected this wasn't the whole truth. "Well, Anna, you've had a serious accident. You have a head injury and some bad bruising, but nothing that won't heal with time and rest. My friends, the men who brought me here, they're outside, worried about you. They said you fell from your horse in the mountain pass." Anna's eyes flickered with something, relief, maybe, or gratitude that Elena was playing along with their story. "Yes," she said softly. It was dark, and the path was dangerous." Elena helped Anna sit up slowly, supporting her back with pillows. As she did, she noticed something else that confirmed her suspicions. Around Anna's neck, almost hidden beneath her torn shirt, was a thin gold chain with a small pendant. Elena couldn't see the pendant clearly, but the quality of the gold told her. This was no ordinary jewelry. You need to rest, Elena said. The head injury isn't as serious, but you might feel dizzy and confused for a few days. And those ribs are going to hurt for at least a week. Anna touched her bandaged forehead gingerly. Thank you, she said. I don't know what would have happened if... Don't think about that now, Elena interrupted. Just focus on getting better. One of the men from outside knocked on the door. Can we see her? He called. Elena looked at Anna, who nodded weakly. Just for a minute, Elena said as she opened the door. The man who entered was tall and lean, with the kind of watchful eyes that suggested he was used to looking out for danger. He moved to Anna's bedside with obvious relief. My lady Anna. He corrected himself quickly. We were so worried, Elena. Notice the slip. My lady was not how ordinary people address their friends. This was how servants or guards spoke to someone of noble birth. I'm fine, Thomas, Anna replied. Thanks to this kind doctor. Thomas reached into his cloak and pulled out a small leather pouch. He placed it on Elena's table with a soft clink. Of coins, for your services, he said, and for your discretion. Elena looked at the pouch but didn't touch it. The amount of gold in there was probably more than she made in 3 months treating villagers. It was the kind of payment that confirmed her suspicions about who her patient really was. I'll need to keep her here for at least 2 days, Elena said. Maybe 3. Head injuries can be unpredictable. Thomas nodded. We'll be nearby if you need anything, or if there's any trouble. Just light a fire on the hillside behind your clinic. We'll see it after Thomas left. Elena sat beside Anna's bed. The woman was trying to stay awake, but Elena could see exhaustion winning the battle. Rest now, Elena said gently. Tomorrow. We'll see how you're healing. As Anna's eyes closed, Elena wondered what she had gotten herself into. If this really was Princess Lina, then helping her could change Elena's life forever. But it could also end it if the wrong people found out. Elena looked out her window at the dark mountains. Somewhere out there, she knew, the king's soldiers were probably still searching. And now, in her small clinic carved into the mountainside, their most wanted target was sleeping peacefully for the first time in 3 years. Elena felt truly afraid, but she also felt something else, a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who could help her heal more than just individual patients. Maybe she had found someone who could help heal an entire kingdom. The next morning, Elena woke to find Anna sitting up in bed, staring out the small window at the village below. The princess, Elena was now certain of her identity, looked much better. The color had returned to her cheeks, and her eyes were clear and alert. Good morning, Elena said softly. How are you feeling? Anna turned to her with a small smile. Much better, thanks to you. I was just watching the village wake up. It's so peaceful here. Elena brought Anna a bowl of warm soup made from vegetables grown in the village gardens. It is peaceful, she agreed. Sometimes I think that's why I've stayed so long. You weren't always here? Anna asked, accepting the soup gratefully. Elena hesitated. Over the past 3 years, she had learned to be careful about sharing her past. But something about Anna made her want to be honest. No. I came here 3 years ago. I was looking for a place where I could help people without complications. Anna studied Elena's face with intelligent eyes. Complications can follow us anywhere, can't they? Even to the most remote mountains. Yes, Elena said quietly. They can. As the days passed, Elena found herself spending more and more time talking with Anna. The princess was supposed to be resting, but her mind was clearly active and curious. She asked Elena about the village, about the people she treated, about the challenges of being a doctor in such a remote place, the children here. Anna said on the 3rd day, they seem healthy and happy despite having so little. In the capital, I've seen wealthy families whose children are sickly and sad. Elena nodded as she changed Anna's bandages. Money can't buy everything. These mountain children have clean air, fresh food, and parents who work hard to care for them. Sometimes simple things matter more than expensive ones, You're right, Anna said thoughtfully. I've learned that lesson myself recently, Elena. Noticed how Anna never talked about her own life directly, but she dropped small hints that revealed her true nature. She knew about conditions in the capital city. She spoke about wealthy families with personal knowledge. Most telling of all, she had strong opinions about the kingdom's problems and seemed to carry the weight of wanting to fix them. On the fourth evening, as Eleanor prepared Anna's evening medicine, the princess asked a question that surprised her. Doctor, have you ever felt like you were meant to do something bigger than what you're doing now? Eleanor paused in her mixing. What do you mean? I mean, you're clearly a skilled healer. You could probably work anywhere, help anyone. But you're here in this small village, treating maybe 10 or 15 people a week. Don't you ever wonder if you could save more lives somewhere else? Eleanor sat down on the chair beside Anna's bed. This was dangerous territory, but she found herself wanting to answer honestly every day. She admitted, I think about all the people in the kingdom who need medical help and can't get it. I think about the hospitals that don't have enough doctors, the villages that have no healers at all. But sometimes, wanting to help everyone means you can't help anyone. Anna leaned forward, wincing slightly from her still healing ribs. But what if there was a way? What if you could help build something bigger, something that could reach all? Those people you're thinking about, that's a beautiful dream, Elena said. But dreams like that require power, resources, influence. People like me don't usually get the chance to change entire kingdoms. People like you are exactly who should get that chance, Anna said firmly. You've proven you care more about healing than profit. You've sacrificed comfort and safety to help others. Those are the qualities real leaders should have. Elena looked at Anna carefully. You talk like someone who's thought a lot about leadership and change. Anna was quiet for a long moment. I have, she said finally. I've seen what bad leadership can do to good people. I've watched a kingdom suffer because the person in charge cares more about his own power than his people's well-being. That's a dangerous thing to say out loud, Eleanor warned gently. Truth is always dangerous. Anna replied, but it's also the only thing that can set people free. Over the following days, their conversations grew deeper and more personal. Anna began sharing stories that revealed her true identity more clearly. Though she never stated it directly, she talked about growing up in luxury, while knowing that people outside the palace walls were suffering. She described the moment she realized that her comfortable life was built on the misery of others. I remember the first time I snuck out of the palace, Anna said one afternoon as Elena checked her healing head wound. I was 16 and curious about the city beyond the gates. What I saw changed everything. What did you see? Elena asked. Children begging for food while perfectly good meals were thrown away in the palace kitchens. Families living in the streets while the royal stables had better conditions than most people's homes. Old people dying from diseases that could be easily treated if they could afford medicine. Elena nodded. She had seen the same inequalities during her time in the capital. It's hard to unsee something like that once you've witnessed it. Exactly, Anna said. From that day forward, I couldn't enjoy my privileged life knowing what it cost others. I started finding ways to help, small things at first, then bigger ones. That must have been difficult for your family to understand, Elena said carefully. Anna's expression darkened. My father. He believes that some people are born to rule and others are born to serve. He thinks showing kindness to common people makes you weak. He says a king who cares too much about his subjects can't make the hard decisions that keep a kingdom strong. And you disagree? Completely. I think a ruler who doesn't care about his people isn't a king at all. He's just a thief with a crown. Elena felt a chill at those words. They were almost identical to what she herself had said to King Aldrich III years ago, the words that had forced her to flee the capital and change her entire life. Anna. Elena said slowly, Can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you really here? I mean, what were you doing in these mountains that led to your accident? Anna was quiet for a long time, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. I was meeting with people who share my beliefs about how the kingdom should be run. People who think change is possible if enough good people work together. That sounds like rebellion. Elena said quietly. Does it scare you? Anna asked. Elena considered the question carefully. 3 years ago, it would have terrified me. I was comfortable, successful, safe. I didn't want to risk what I had built. But now I've seen what happens when good people stay silent while bad things happen. Maybe rebellion isn't always wrong. Anna reached out and took Elena's hand. You're braver than you think. Coming here, building this clinic, helping these people, that's rebellion too. You're proving that there's a better way to live than what the current system offers. Elena felt tears in her eyes. For 3 years, she had thought of herself as a coward who had run away, instead of fighting. But Anna was helping her see her life differently. Sometimes I feel so small, Elena admitted. Like nothing I do here really matters in the bigger picture. Everything matters. Anna said firmly, every life you save, every person you heal, every kindness you show, it all matters. You're keeping hope alive in this corner of the kingdom. That's not small. That's enormous. As the 2 weeks of Anna's recovery drew to a close, Elena realized that something fundamental had changed inside her. The quiet acceptance she had found in her mountain exile was being replaced by something else, a growing fire that demanded action. Anna had awakened something in Elena that had been sleeping since her flight from the capital. The desire to heal not just individual patients, but an entire kingdom that was sick with injustice and cruelty. On Anna's last night in the clinic, as Eleanor prepared fresh bandages for her journey, the princess made an observation that would haunt Eleanor long after she left. You know, Anna said, I think we're more alike than either of us expected when we first met. How so? Eleanor asked. We both left comfortable lives because we couldn't stand to watch suffering and do nothing. We both believe healing is more important than personal safety. And we both dream of a world where everyone has the chance to live with dignity and hope. Eleanor nodded, feeling the truth of those words deep in her heart. The difference is, Anna continued, you've been healing people one at a time, while I've been trying to heal the whole kingdom at once. Maybe we could learn from each other. As Eleanor looked into Anna's eyes, she saw not just a patient who had recovered, but a kindred spirit who understood the burden of caring too much in a world that rewarded cruelty. Tomorrow, Anna would leave, and Eleanor would return to her quiet life among the mountains. But both women knew that something irreversible had happened during these 2 weeks together. They had found each other, and in doing so, they had found the courage to imagine a different future. On Anna's final night at the clinic, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the moon cast silver light across the mountain peaks. Tomorrow, her mysterious patient would leave, and life would return to its quiet routine. But Eleanor knew she would never be the same. Something had changed during these 2 weeks. The comfortable numbness she had wrapped around her heart like a protective blanket was gone. In its place was a restless energy, a growing certainty that her small clinic, while meaningful, wasn't enough anymore. Can't sleep either? Anna's voice came softly from her bed. Eleanor turned. I keep thinking about what you said earlier, about healing the whole kingdom instead of one person at a time. Anna sat up carefully, her injuries nearly healed now. And what conclusion have you reached? That I'm afraid, Eleanor admitted. I've built a safe life here. The villagers trust me. I help people every day. And nobody asks uncomfortable questions about my past. Leaving all that for an uncertain future terrifies me. Anna was quiet for a long moment. Then she made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Eleanor, she said, using the doctor's real name for the first time. I haven't been completely honest with you. Eleanor's breath caught. What do you mean? I know who you are. Dr. Eleanor Marchetti, former head surgeon at the Royal Medical Center. The woman who stood up to King Aldrich and called him out for attacking his own people. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. How did you? Because I was there that day, Anna said quietly. I was in the palace courtyard when you spoke those words to my father. The world seemed to stop spinning. Your father, Anna nodded slowly. My real name is Lyanna, Princess Lyanna, and King Aldrich, the man you so bravely confronted 3 years ago is my father." Elena stared at her, mind reeling. She had suspected, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a physical blow. "You're the king's daughter. The one he's been hunting for months. The one he disowned, yes. The one whose face appears on wanted posters throughout the kingdom." Lionel's voice carried years of pain, but also the one who believes everything you said to him that day was absolutely right. Elena stood up abruptly, pacing to the far side of the small room. "This is impossible. I've been harboring the king's own daughter. Do you have any idea what he would do to me if he found out? The same thing he wants to do to me." Lionel said calmly, "But Elena, listen to me. I didn't tell you this to frighten you. I told you because I want you to know that your words that day didn't fall on deaf ears. Someone in that courtyard was listening. Someone agreed with every word you said." Elena turned back to face her. "That doesn't change the fact that you're his daughter. You're royalty. I'm just a doctor who made one mistake and had to run away." "No," Lionel said firmly, standing up despite her healing ribs. "You're the woman who had the courage to speak truth to power when everyone else stayed silent. You're the healer who gave up wealth and status to serve people who needed you most. You're exactly the kind of person this kingdom needs in positions of real influence." "What are you talking about?" Lionel moved closer, her eyes intense with passion and purpose. "Elena, what I'm about to tell you must stay between us, no matter what you decide to do with the information." Elena nodded, though her heart was racing. "I'm not just hiding from my father. I'm building something. A network of people throughout the kingdom who believe change is possible. Progressive nobles who are tired of the king's cruelty, merchants who want fair trade policies, farmers who deserve better prices for their crops, and healers who want to serve all people, not just the wealthy." Elena listened in amazement as Lionel described a carefully planned movement that had been growing in secret for over a year. Safe houses, supply lines, communication networks, and most importantly, detailed plans for what would come after the current system fell. "This isn't just rebellion for the sake of rebellion," Lionel explained. "We have plans for land redistribution, tax reform, educational programs, and yes, a comprehensive medical system that would bring healers to every village in the kingdom." "How is that even possible?" Elena asked. "Because we're not trying to destroy everything and start over. We're trying to transform what exists into something better. Many of the people currently serving in government positions are good people trapped in a bad system. They would welcome change if they knew it was coming from someone who understood both the problems and the solutions." Lionel reached into her travel bag and pulled out a leather folder. "Look at this." Elena opened the folder and gasped. Inside were detailed maps of the kingdom, marked with locations for proposed medical clinics, lists of potential healers who could be trained and stationed throughout the realm, budgets for supplies, building costs, and ongoing operations, plans for mobile medical units that could reach the most remote areas. "You've thought of everything," Elena whispered. "We've had to. This isn't a fantasy or a childhood dream. This is a real plan, created by real people who understand what it takes to run a kingdom properly." Lionel paused. "But we need someone to lead the medical transformation, someone with the skills, the experience, and the moral authority to build something completely new." Elena looked up from the documents. "You want me to join your rebellion?" "I want you to help me heal our kingdom," Lionel corrected. "The same way you've been healing this village, but on a scale that could save thousands of lives." Elena set the folder down with shaking hands. "Lionel, what you're describing is incredible. But it's also incredibly dangerous. If you fail, then we die knowing we tried to build something better," Lionel said simply. "But Elena, what if we succeed? What if we actually manage to create a kingdom where every child can see a doctor when they're sick? Where elderly people don't have to choose between medicine and food? Where healers like you are honored and supported instead of forced into exile?" Elena walked back to the window, looking out at the sleeping village. These people had become her family over the past 3 years. Leaving them felt like abandonment. "What about the villagers here?" she asked. "They depend on me. We would make sure they're cared for," Lionel promised. "In fact, this village would become one of our model communities. A place where people could see how the new system works. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Stay safe in her mountain refuge, or risk everything for the chance to heal an entire kingdom. I need to know something, Elena said finally. Why me? You could probably find other doctors, other healers willing to join your cause. Lioness smiled sadly, because 3 years ago, you proved you were willing to sacrifice everything for your principles. Because you've spent these years proving that healing matters more to you than comfort or safety. And because, she paused, because I've watched you work, and I've never seen anyone care about their patients the way you do. That kind of dedication can't be taught or faked. Elena felt tears starting in her eyes. If I say yes, there's no going back, is there? No, Lina admitted. But Elena, there's no going back anyway. My father's soldiers are getting closer to finding this place. The wanted posters with your face are spreading to more remote areas. Your quiet life here has an expiration date whether you join us or not. The truth of those words hit Elena like cold water. She had been fooling herself, thinking she could hide forever. Sooner or later, her past would catch up with her. How long do I have to decide? Elena asked. We leave tomorrow night, Lina said. I wish I could give you more time, but staying longer puts both of us and everyone in this village at risk. Elena nodded, understanding. She looked around the small clinic that had been her sanctuary for 3 years, at the shelves of medicine she had made by hand, the beds where she had saved so many lives, the window where she had watched the seasons change over the peaceful village. Tomorrow night, she would have to choose between the safety of the known and the terrifying possibility of something greater. As she finally tried to sleep, Elena's mind raced with images of the future Lina had described. Medical clinics in every village, healers trained and equipped to serve all people. A kingdom where being sick didn't mean being sentenced to die. It was everything she had dreamed of during her darkest moments in exile. The question was whether she had the courage to reach for it. By morning, Elena knew that her answer would determine not just her own fate, but the fate of countless people she had never met but already felt responsible for healing. Elena spent the entire next day torn between two futures. Every time she looked at a patient, she wondered if she was seeing them for the last time. When little Katie brought her a drawing of flowers, Elena had to fight back tears. When old Peter thanked her for the medicine that helped his arthritis, she wondered who would care for him if she left. But then she would think about Lina's plans. The detailed maps showing medical clinics in every corner of the kingdom. The lists of healers who could be trained to serve people who had never seen a doctor in their entire lives. The possibility of building something so much bigger than her small mountain clinic. As evening approached, Elena made her decision. She began writing letters to each family in the village, explaining that she had to leave suddenly, but that another healer would come to take her place. She packed her most essential medical supplies and instruments, leaving behind everything else that had made this place feel like home. When Lina's guards came to collect them after dark, Elena was ready. She had left detailed notes about each patient's ongoing treatment and a letter for the village elder explaining how to contact the network that would send a replacement doctor. Are you sure about this? Lina asked as they prepared to leave. Elena looked back at her clinic one last time. No, she said honestly, but I'm sure that doing nothing is no longer an option. They rode through the night toward an uncertain future. What Elena didn't know was that in 3 days, King Aldrich's soldiers would arrive in the village, searching for both women. They would find Elena's clinic empty except for a note directing them toward a false trail leading deeper into the mountains. The real trail led to a network of safe houses that had been carefully prepared over months of planning. Elena's first surprise came when she realized how many people were already part of Lina's movement. Farmers, merchants, minor nobles, former soldiers, teachers, and yes, other healers who had grown tired of watching people suffer needlessly. At their first safe house, Elena met Dr. Benjamin, a young physician who had been secretly treating poor families in the capital. There was also Helen, a midwife who had been training village women in basic medical care, and Robert, a veterinarian who had been adapting animal medicines for human use when nothing else was available. "We've been waiting for someone like you," Benjamin told Elena. "Someone with the experience to organize all of this into something that actually works." Elena was amazed to discover that Lina's network already included over 100 healers. Spread across the kingdom, they had been working in isolation, each thinking they were alone in their desire to serve all people regardless of their ability to pay. "This is incredible," Elena told Lina as they reviewed maps and supply lists. "You've built something I never imagined was possible." "We've built the foundation," Lina corrected. "But we need someone to design the actual structure. That's where you come in." Over the following weeks, Elena threw herself into the work with an energy she hadn't felt in years. She designed training programs for new healers, created supply, distribution systems, and established communication networks between different regions. For the first time since leaving the capital, she felt like she was using all of her skills and knowledge. But the greatest surprise wasn't the scope of the medical network they were building. It was the friendship that deepened between Elena and Lina as they worked side by side. Despite their different backgrounds, they discovered they shared the same values, the same sense of humor, and the same unwavering commitment to healing. Lina's royal education had given her knowledge of politics and strategy, while Elena's medical training had taught her how to organize complex systems and manage resources efficiently. "We make a good team," Lina observed one evening as they planned the liberation of a major city. "I never expected to find a true partner in this work," Elena admitted. "I thought I was destined to always work alone." Their partnership proved to be exactly what the resistance movement needed. Lina's political vision combined with Elena's practical knowledge created a new model for how a kingdom could care for its people. They weren't just fighting against the old system, they were building a better one to replace it. The revolution, when it finally came, was swifter than anyone had expected. King Aldrich's support had been crumbling for months as more people joined the resistance. When Lina finally revealed herself publicly and challenged her father's rule, she had the backing of most of the kingdom's population. Elena watched from the crowd as Lina addressed the people from the palace balcony where her father had once ordered attacks on peaceful protesters. The young woman who had arrived at Elena's clinic as a mysterious injured patient was now addressing the kingdom as their new queen. "My first act as your ruler," Lina announced, "will be to establish a comprehensive medical system that ensures every person in our kingdom has access to healing, regardless of their wealth or status." The crowd cheered, but Elena felt tears in her eyes. This was the moment she had dreamed of but never believed possible. After the ceremony, Lina found Elena in the crowd. "Are you ready for your next surprise?" she asked with a smile. Elena laughed. "I think I've had enough surprises for one lifetime. Just one more, I promise." Lina led Elena to a carriage that took them to the edge of the capital city, where construction was already beginning on something Elena had never imagined. "The National Medical College," Lina explained as Elena stared at the building site, "where we'll train the next generation of healers, and where you'll serve as the first director of medical education for the entire kingdom." Elena was speechless. The building plan showed classrooms, laboratories, libraries, and clinical training facilities that would rival anything she had seen in her former life at the Royal Medical Center. "But there's more," Lina continued, leading Elena to another site nearby, the Central Research Hospital, where you'll oversee the development of new treatments and medicines. And over there, she pointed to a third location, the headquarters, for our mobile medical units that will reach every village in the kingdom. Elena sat down on a nearby stone, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Lina was offering her. "This is beyond anything I ever dreamed possible, Elena," Lina said, sitting beside her. "Do you remember what you told me about feeling small? About wondering if anything you did really mattered?" Elena nodded. "You've just helped build a medical system that will save thousands of lives every year. You've trained healers who will serve in villages that have never had medical care. You've turned the dream of universal health care into reality." Lina paused. "Does that feel small to you?" Elena looked around at the bustling construction. at the workers building facilities that would serve people throughout the kingdom, at the future she had helped create. No, she said softly, it feels like everything I was meant to do. But perhaps the greatest surprise of all was something Elena only fully realized months later. As she stood in her new office overlooking the completed medical college, the reward for treating that injured stranger wasn't just the position, the resources, or even the chance to heal thousands of people. The real reward was the friendship she had found with Lina. Together, they had transformed not just the kingdom's approach to healthcare, but each other's understanding of what was possible. When people with shared values worked together, Elena had expected to treat a patient and return to her quiet life. Instead, she had found her true calling, helped create a new world, and gained a friendship that would define the rest of her days. Sometimes, she reflected, the best rewards are the ones you never see coming, the ones that change not just your circumstances, but your entire understanding of what your life could become. As she watched the first class of new healers begin their studies, Elena smiled. The woman who had once hidden in the mountains was now shaping the future of medicine for an entire kingdom, and it all started with a simple decision to help someone who needed healing, no matter who they might be or what danger it might bring. That, Elena realized, was the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest adventures begin with nothing more than choosing kindness over fear.